gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's June the 12th, 2023. I'm Gary Furman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined by the full crew today. Matt Shodell, our managing editor, Stephen Wagner, and Azubi Charles, as we discuss the news of the day. And guys, the news of the day is really the news of the weekend because the Miami Hurricanes had an enormously important official visitor list this past weekend. And some of it we were able to get a decent read on. Some of it we weren't. Some of it you just left wondering, are we being told the truth? All the reviews were absolutely glowing. But let's be real, every single one of these guys is not going to be a Miami Hurricane. So we got to try to work through some of it. And we'll talk about that a little bit right now. Things started very early yesterday. Official visitors. We actually had one official visitor, defensive lineman David Stone, who left Miami at 4:45 in the morning. We would love to tell you why he left so early, but David Stone did not make himself available to us yesterday, so we are left to speculate here. Guys, let's start with Stone. This is going to be a recruitment that clearly is going to go on for a while. Didn't leave in the mood to talk about his visit much. Is that a concern? Is it something you just, shrug off? That's, as a whatever development. Stephen, I'll start with you. Your read on the silence of Mr. David Stone, the defensive tackle from the IMG Academy that Miami so badly wants.
Yeah, I kind of shrugged this off because this isn't the first time that he's done this. He also did this whenever he came to Mario Cristobal's pool party back in mid-May. So him doing this and just kind of shrugging everyone off, I just kind of shrug my own shoulders at that. I'm really more of a no news is good news type guy because what I don't want is David Stone, hyping up Miami falsely to really play an angle at Oklahoma, who has been the overwhelming favorite to land Stone for so much of this recruitment. So I'm a big no news is good news type of guy. I'm taking his silence as probably more of something along the lines of, hey, this probably is what everyone else's official visit was like, good, glowing, a lot of personalized treatment, a lot of one-on-ones, all kinds of stuff. I do think, however, that the biggest challenge that Miami has for David Stone is keeping whatever momentum they've generated, because that's really been the most that's really been what Miami has struggled with most in Stone's commitment. Is every time that they've been able to get a little bit of momentum, it feels like Oklahoma has just snatched it right back. And I think that's really what Miami has to really heavily focus on in these next couple of weeks now that he's leaving Coral Gables with, I'm assuming, probably the same warm, fuzzy feeling and the excitement that all of these other prospects are.
All right, Azubi, you've been face-to-face with David Stone. You visited him a few weeks back at IMG Academy. He's a little different when you're with him than he is over the telephone. So you're probably not reading a whole heck of a lot into his silence after his visit either.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking the silence for anything negative. I mean, I've had David Stone's phone number for almost a year now, and I think I've spoken to him over the phone twice. So not hearing from him isn't, any surprise to me. Like you mentioned, when you speak face-to-face to David Stone, he'll tell you, everything you want to know. He's a real open kid, a real honest kid, and, just sometimes I try to put myself in their shoes. You just left an official visit. You probably have 1,000 different people trying to call you, get you this and that after spending the weekend around a whole bunch of craziness. So I'm not taking this for anything serious. Obviously, he did leave early. Not sure what his plans were, but different people will leave at different times. Hopefully, we can get him over the phone to see his overall reaction to the official visit, but I'm not sweating this too much. His 4th visit to Miami since February or March, I believe. So obviously he likes Miami to come back 4 different occasions and for the official visit. So hopefully when we get David Stone on the phone, if the third time, hope to God it's the charm, we get him on the phone. But if not, I'm not sweating too much not hearing, David Stone, because I've heard great things from every single prospect that we spoke to yesterday about the official visit. And I feel like it wouldn't make too much sense for a guy Miami's recruiting that hard to have such an awful experience that he's not saying anything. So not sweating this one at all.
Yeah, and you guys that are watching the show this morning, and by the way, we thank you as always for starting out your day with us. And if you like this show, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button, helps us with the algorithms at YouTube. And more than anything, if you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please join our community of fans, join our website. Your subscriptions allow us to do what we do every single day. And and we don't want you to think that we didn't exhaust every single possibility to try to reach David Stone after his visit. I mean, we went so far. I mean, Azubi's trying to call him. He's leaving him voicemails. Hey, David, it's your buddy Azubi from Miami. And that did not have the positive effect. Matt tried to call him on the phone. Hey, David, you want some stone crabs? If you take my call, we'll give you some stone crabs. Of course, Matt forgot that stone crab season is no longer in effect, and he would get thrown in jail if he went to Biscayne Bay and tried to catch some stone crabs for David Stone. So then it was left to Steven to give it a shot. And, Steven offered to send them some Texas barbecue if he would answer the phone. And that didn't work either. So we're left here going into Monday. And we promise you, we will still be trying to bring you the story today of David Stone's visit over the weekend. We might have to put our thinking caps on and come up with more creative tactics than what we did yesterday. But we just want you to know, as you're watching the show this morning, that we exhausted every single possibility to try to make that happen for you guys. Okay, there's another one, similar story, and I'm starting with the tough ones first. So we'll get to all the happy-go-lucky stuff that we were able to deliver yesterday to you guys. But Dylan Stewart, another 5-star defensive tackle, proved to be quite elusive. Steven, your take on that one. Why was Dylan Stewart? I mean, all indications are Miami is doing well there in that recruitment. Why was he reluctant coming off the visit to talk about it?
Yeah, that one really is a little bit more of a head scratcher because I've been able to get Dylan Stewart over the phone twice. And both times he's been okay about talking. He's a guy who likes to hold his cards very, very close to his chest. And he also did the same thing whenever he came down for Mario Cristobal's pool party in mid-May. He also declined our interview requests and just kind of went along with his day. I can tell you, however, that some people that I trust did tell me that they felt like the official visit went pretty well overall. They thought they made a really good impression, and they felt like they really liked a lot where things sat with Dylan Stewart. We said coming into the official visit that Jason Taylor has been a really, really big reason for his interest in the Hurricanes. The people that I talked to said that still seems to kind of continue to be the case, that Jason Taylor really is a guy who Dylan Stewart respects the heck out of. And I know that a lot of people are feeling very good about the Hurricanes coming out of this visit. So I think this may just be more of a case of simply a guy doesn't want to do interviews. He didn't feel like speaking to the media after his official visit. So I really don't put very much weight in that either, because by all means, from what I've been able to gather, it does seem that the visit went well.
All right, we will be continuing that chase today, so stay tuned for CaneSport.com for any news that we can gather on Dylan Stewart's visit. Obviously, as a 5-star, one of the more important visitors of the weekend. But we were able to peel these guys off one by one, really, as they finished their visit. Just to summarize before we talk about it, 5-star Ellis Robinson, who is a Georgia commit, he said that his Miami Hurricanes official visit had a big impact on him. Still think that's going to be a knockdown drag out with the Bulldogs. I'm not making any predictions there. He's a 5-star corner that a lot of people think is an impact player, an instant impact player. He is going to command a big NIL deal wherever he goes. And within the parameters of today's NIL, I'm guessing he's going to have to feel pretty secure in that before he truly does commit firmly to a school. And, right now that school is Georgia. Miami is trying to flip that. You got another 5-star defensive lineman that visited, Colin Simmons. He said he was wowed on his Hurricanes visit, that Miami checked off every single mark on his checklist. As he went home, I spoke to some sources out in Texas who tell me there is no way Colin Simmons is coming to Miami. He really wants to go to LSU. Texas and Texas A&M remain a factor there. So we're not getting all crazy, even though we got a extremely, extremely glowing review from Colin Simmons. And you guys can read that on the website if you haven't yet. That's one to sort of, just let it simmer off to the side there and see what happens. But I personally believe, based on the sources I spoke to, that there's a lot of work left to be done there. Other guys that visited that we have updates on, you have 4-star running back Jarrett Gibson, linebacker Keyshawn Flowers, defensive lineman TJ Lindsey. Let's see, 4-star defensive lineman LJ McCray, offensive lineman Ty Hilton, offensive lineman Aiden Breland, 4-star wide receiver Braylon Staley, and also cornerback Sion Lalea as well. So, guys, you all three of you each spoke to certain guys yesterday after the visits. Let me go one by one. Azumi, I'll start with you. Which of those official visitors left the biggest impression upon you, and where do you think the Miami hand is strongest as we sit here at 5 a.m. on Monday morning?
Well, I would definitely say the biggest impression that I got was from Colin Simmons. And like you said, the kid just said all the right things coming off the official visit. And kind of the biggest thing that stood out to me was him saying Miami has a 3-year plan for me. And obviously we know usually kids stay at school for 4 years, but they're trying to get him out as soon as they can. And he just broke that down and talked about how they're just so focused on him, and not only during his time in Miami, but after his time in Miami, life after football and his family and things like that. As you mentioned, LSU seems to be the front runner. The Texas schools seem to be really making a big push. And I really thought about that because Miami is his first official visit, and he still has the whole entire summer to go to these different programs and see different things and kind of almost forget about Miami, put them on a back burner for being, the first official visit. But I feel like if they're able to get him out to Miami again, some type of way, somehow, that'll be good for them. But just thinking, the Hurricanes are his first official visit, kind of, it's good and bad. Obviously, Miami sets the bar for every other program that he goes to, but they're going to be the afterthought after 5 official visits. I don't know how much you can remember from, your first one after the entire summer. But another guy that I feel like, Miami's in a good spot with after speaking with him is actually Keyshawn Flowers, a 3-star linebacker. I had the chance to speak with him, and he just told me, obviously, Miami's already been in a good spot with me. They've been recruiting me the most out of any program, and just coming here and seeing how they treated my family kind of not pushed him over the edge, but really showed him a lot about the program. He's raved about Coach Derek Nicholson, raved about Coach Mario Cristobal, the whole entire staff, and he just had really good things about him to say as well. Another guy that I'm really interested in as well is Ellis Robinson. Obviously, you mentioned, NIL playing a big role in his recruitment. And from someone I trust or someone close to the source, they said it's going to be a battle between Miami and Georgia with that, NIL among other factors. So really interested to see how bad Miami actually wants Ellis Robinson and, what comes out of that. Obviously, we know Coach Jamil Adai coming from Georgia. He obviously knows how they get down over there in Athens. So really, really interested to see how this battle kind of comes down when the season comes around and when it comes closer to signing day with Ellis Robinson. But overall kind of thought of the weekend, very, very good in Miami. Everyone really seemed like they had a great time and said only great things about their weekend in Coral Gables.
Matt Shodell, I understand we've had you in solitary confinement for the first 14 minutes of the show. I apologize for that, but a lot to cover here today. What did you walk away from these official visits this weekend?
Well, first of all, you're phrasing the question wrong. That's not what you should be asking any of us.
Everybody you walk away with. I know I left out the word with. I'm sorry.
No, that's got nothing to do with it. But look, let's use a phrase from when you were growing up, Gary. Let's call a fig a fig. That's an old Roman expression. It's probably a dirty expression, which you probably enjoy. First things first, okay? You can talk, talking heads can talk all, why isn't this kid answering the phone, blah, 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 blah. The truth is, look, Azubi and Steven have been doing this for a couple of years now. I've been doing it for way too long. But what we find, what the data points to, and you know how much I love data, is, and it makes sense when you think about it too, but it is true. When a recruit plans to go to a particular school, they're going to announce a decision, right? And schools generally get a decent idea of what's going on. Sometimes they don't. But when a recruit answers your phone call off an official visit, heading into an announcement, it's generally a pretty good sign that they're very interested in that school because if they, think about it this way, if you're a recruit yourself, you out there in the YouTube verse, if you're a top recruit in the country and you have a pretty good idea in your mind after your visit, you're going to go to that school you just visited and play there. Do you want to upset the media that's going to be covering you at that school? Do you want to not give any information to the fan base that's going to be rooting for you at that school? So Azubi and Steven can say, oh, no news is good news. No news is bad news. Like, if a guy's that excited and plans to play somewhere, usually they want to placate the media or the fans. The text I was sending David Stone were, David, fans are so excited about your visit, would love to even just get a quick quote on how it went. Radio silence. And at this point, if David Stone calls me, I'm going to hang up on him so we can see what it feels like. The tables are turned. Sometimes the stone goes on the other foot. Anyway, with that said, coming off of the official visits, the only guys that I feel, fairly confident about are Elijah Lofton, who left, I believe, on Saturday. And I'm not going to pronounce his first name, Lalea. And I'm not going to pronounce his first name. Is a really, really good player. He's friends with Demetrius Freeney. And I'm not going to pronounce his first name, has a huge upside. And I think that he will be a Hurricane, but I don't believe he plans to do anything imminently. It's just if I was putting in an RPM prediction, I don't know what these things are called anymore, an AI prediction, I would put it in for Miami with probably a 70% confidence at this point. Elijah Lofton, I'd put even a little higher than 70%. I think he had a great time. And I'm glad all these recruits had a great time. I'm glad they had fun on the visits and all this other stuff. But just like in December, this is the new normal. June's the new December. And in December, if you're recruiting, the last weekend before signing day is when you bring every big hitter, every heavy hitter in, all your commitments come in that weekend to make sure you have got them sealed up. That is what they're doing the last weekend of June because that's the new last weekend of December before signing day. The last week in June is that new thing. The last weekend in June that you can take a visit before the dead period hits is when all the commitments are coming for their officials. That's when you want guys to come so they can bond with your fellow official visitors, with your fellow commitments, or not fellow, but with the commitments, right? If you have a 5-star like David Stone, he comes in and really loves, 5 of the guys who are already committed, bonds with them. That's great. That's what you want. So to me, everyone can put a great face on it. Like, I'm just telling the truth. Like, I'm a truth teller. It's nice everyone had a fun time. It's nice everyone had a great time in the visit. I see 2 guys I think are going to be Hurricanes that were actually here that I feel good about. The best I'd put any of these other guys is 50-50. The best I'd put any of them, and probably a handful of them are pretty much below 50-50. And that's just the truth. Like, when you talk to sources at Miami, they feel good about this guy. People put out these posts like, sources are telling me Miami felt good about every single visitor. This one guy it's going to be tough with. Like, that's Miami, maybe people leaking some stuff, right? But where are Miami people getting their info? They're getting their info from these players on these visits. And these players love these visits, but the Miami people who are leaking this information don't necessarily know what the kids said to Texas. These kids are all taking more visits, right? Miami's not the last visit before they announce. That's why you want that last visit in June, because a lot of these kids announce the end of June, first couple of weeks of July. That's why you want that visit weekend. And check back with me after that last visit weekend in June, because I think we're going to get a bunch of commitments. I'm just not sure they're the guys that were here this weekend. I'm sorry to say it, but Miami had to take their shots with the 5-stars. A 5-star says, here's the date I'll visit you. You say, how about the weekend before July starts? And they say, no, this is when I can come. You say, of course, come on down, which is what happened. And that's okay. But like, don't everyone get so excited that we're going to land 4 5-star commitments and everything? Like, I don't want Mario put in this box where Mario failed because he didn't get 4 5-stars who visited the second weekend in June. Like, that's not a failure if he doesn't get any of them. If he gets one of those 4 5-stars, to me, that's a success. So let's not put this big paintbrush with Azubi and Steven talking about everyone was amazing. They have a great shot with everybody. No, they don't.
Steven, your response?
That's what happens when you don't let me talk for 12 minutes.
I was about to say something, and then I told myself, wait a second, Matt's going to say one more thing. And he did. So I'm very proud of myself for learning about that, or for finally picking up on Matt's traits. You know, I actually am going to agree with Matt on some of this stuff. Because, yeah, I do think that if these guys really were that excited and really were thinking, yeah, this is the place that I want to go, they probably would be picking up the phone. But we've noticed with guys like Dylan Stewart, and I think Chad Simmons reported this, that he's pretty confident that this is a recruitment that could go potentially all the way up until signing day. So there is a lot left in his recruitment. And a lot of these guys, they don't talk to anyone, period. I mean, heck, even Miami's highest ranked commit right now, Chance Robinson, whenever I'm able to get him in person, yeah, sure, he'll always talk. And he'll talk about how much he loves the Canes and how excited he is to get down to Coral Gables and how he thinks, Mario Cristobal is building something special and all the stuff that you really do want to hear out of your commits. But over the phone, I'll get him maybe 1 out of every 8 times that I call or text him. A lot of these kids outright don't talk. I think this is just kind of the world that we're living in. David Stone, he's another guy who overall has been kind of quiet unless you happen to be a Chad Simmons or maybe a Steve Wiltfong at 247, whose name happens to just hold a little bit of weight because everybody knows who you are at this point. So I don't necessarily think it's a terrible thing. And another thing that we've seen, especially with NIL coming up and NIL coming into the picture, is these kids understanding how to wage a little bit of a bidding war between these two schools. Let's say that it's down to, I don't know, Miami and USC for player X, or actually better yet, Miami and Texas A&M, because those Aggies will spend like there's no tomorrow. Why not say, hey, I loved the way everything went at Miami. They showed me the most luxurious time. They put me up at the nicest hotel in downtown Miami, and they showed me all of the beautiful places Coral Gables has, or all of the beautiful things Coral Gables has to offer, and they took me to $1,000 dinner, and they're really trying to flex, how fantastic this visit was. They might be trying to do that because they're trying to milk the other school for everything that they're worth. I think that that's something that we've seen too. So do I think that if things had gone fantastic, that these kids would be picking up the phone and they'd be eager to talk and they'd be chatting about Miami and they'd be talking up Miami just every second that they get? Yeah, probably. But do I think it's the end of the world? No, because I do recognize that there's a few different angles that these kids might be working.
All right. So you guys can look at all the stories on the website if you haven't already. We've got deep reviews on everybody that visited this weekend, other than those 2 5-star defensive linemen that we will continue to try to reach here this week, and make your own judgments on where Miami stands. Now, I guess you're saying, okay, so where are the commitments? Okay, let's talk about that. Miami got a commitment on Saturday night from inside linebacker Cam Pruitt. Guys, that one kind of a little bit came out of nowhere. I mean, he's a 3-star kid. He's from Theodore, Alabama. We wrote about him before his visit. Talk a little bit. Let's see, Stephen, why don't you take this one since you've spoken to Cam Pruitt? Tell us a little bit about his commitment and what you think Miami's getting in Mr. Pruitt.
Yeah, Cam has been really high on Miami for a really long time. He's loved just the effort that Miami has recruited him with, the consistency that they've recruited him with, and really just the relationship that he's been able to develop with linebackers coach Derek Nicholson and a few other off-field assistants and some of the recruiting staff. And basically, I had the chance to talk to his mom as well, and she said that it really just came down to he knew that he liked Miami. He knew Miami was the favorite heading into this visit. And as soon as he saw enough, him and his mom kind of had this moment. They had a little discussion. And Cam kind of just came to the realization, dude, why not? Like, I'm already here. The time feels right. Why not commit? Let's go ahead and do this freaking thing. And so he went ahead and committed. Derek Nicholson was, really ecstatic. Mario Cristobal, really ecstatic. And this is a guy that Miami is very excited about. He's a really versatile piece. He's about 6'2", 185, 190, somewhere in that range. So he's got size that can be moved around a little bit. He's very athletic too. He said they could even end up putting him in at the star position. I asked him what positions he could end up playing at Miami. He said everywhere. Mike, Will, Sam, star. You name it. They're talking about putting me there. He kind of comes across as like this Swiss Army knife or Miami sees him as kind of this Swiss Army knife that they can really move all across the field. And I can tell you that this is a player that Miami staff is very excited about. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, well, he's just a 3-star recruit. Well, I've got two things for that. One, he's a high 3-star, so with a little asterisk next to that. And two, I had a person who I really trust who works in Power 5 recruiting and player evaluation. One time they told me that in every single recruiting class every year, there's like 10 to 15 5-star players. And a 5-star player is somebody who can step on the field at any program and start immediately. There's about 10 to 15 guys, or at least get playing time, just play right away. Everybody else is a 3-star.
Steven, first of all, your mother is not a Power 5 recruiter. She's not a Power 5 recruiter. Okay, stop saying that that's what she is. Okay, I have some thoughts, but you can continue. I'll finish after your 10-minute diatribe is over.
It's actually my grandmother.
And the other thing I'll throw in there is there's more than 15 5-stars. Now, you're making a good point in that if there's 25 to 35 stars, they're not all going to be hits as 5-stars. That you're 100% correct about. I'm not buying this that they're all 3-stars, though, just to be on the record. Like, they might be 4-stars and not really 5-stars, but I don't know that they're 3-stars. I don't know what's giving your mother this idea, as Matt says. But the guys that are 5-stars are usually pretty good players.
Okay. First off, like I said, it's my grandmother, and she actually just turned 91 2 days ago. So happy belated birthday, Grandma. And she does know a thing or two about Power 5 recruiting. I'll have you know. But no,
Gary, was she in your graduating class?
He wakes up so funny, doesn't he?
I don't mean, or whenever this person told me kind of the way that they view recruiting classes between 5-stars and 3-stars, I didn't take that literally. Obviously, every single program in the country, they grade their prospects a little bit differently. Some may have similar philosophies or things that they look for. But everyone's going to grade every recruit a little bit differently. And so some recruits are going to be more valuable than others. So obviously those guys will be higher than 3-stars, but I kind of get, what this guy was getting at whenever he told me that, these 5-star caliber players, whether they actually have stars next to their name or not, they can come onto the field and they can play right away. They can compete for playing time. They can start, they can do whatever. Everybody else, more or less, is going to be somewhat of a development project that you're kind of rolling the dice at least a little bit on. And you're hoping, hey, this guy has some pieces. Maybe he happens to have a really high floor. He grades out very well for us. We think that he would fit very well into the system. But since he's not at the point right now where he can come in and step on the field immediately, we're going to roll the dice a little bit. And we're going to hope and bet that our development is good enough to get him on the field and produce these results, and that our grades are good enough and our scouting process is thorough enough that we know that this kid is what we were hoping that he is going to be, that he is going to actually develop the way that we wanted him to. So, yeah, I'm not taking the 5-star thing literally, but I do get the point. Because some of these guys are actually going to step out on the field and compete as freshmen. Everybody else, you really are hoping that they turn out to be the player that you think they're going to be.
All right. A recruiting weekend would not be whole. A recruiting weekend would not be a recruiting weekend if Mario Cristobal did not do something significant to get under the skin of Matt Shodell. Okay, because it's like you just do that for sport. Okay, it's very important. So it took until Sunday night for it to hit, but it finally did, and that was at 7:00 on Sunday night when the Miami Hurricanes took a commitment from Louisville linebacker KJ Cloyd. So this commitment comes in and says, I've never heard of KJ Cloyd. So we start doing some research and we find out that KJ Cloyd is a 6'2", 229-pounder. He played middle linebacker at Louisville last season. He was a backup who played just 140 reps at Louisville last season. He had 15 tackles, a couple quarterback hurries, and 1 fumble recovery at Louisville last season. He played junior college ball his first year out of high school. Then he ends up at Louisville, played off the bench in 11 games, had 12 tackles in his second season. Then in 2021, he started 1 game and came off the bench in 12 others. He had 12 tackles that year. Okay, now, this is not a resume that is going to get Matt Shodell all lathered up. Okay, let's be honest. This is as modest of a resume as you are going to find in the transfer portal. This resume supports every argument that Matt Shodell has been making for month after month after month about the transfer portal, and selecting the guys that you take from the portal. So my question is, Matt, obviously the Miami football staff knows a heck of a lot more than you do. I mean, I don't think I'm upsetting you saying that. I mean, that is a cold, hard fact. They know more than Matt Shodell. Okay, so my question is this. Why are they taking KJ Cloyd with this modest as heck resume? And in taking him, how loud of a statement is this about how they feel about the linebacker position right now on their roster after Francisco Maigoa, who universally has been lauded as maybe the best player of all on the defense, a guy that is going to transform the Miami defense into a bunch of man-eaters this fall. They clearly think they know more. They need more than what they have. So your thoughts, A, on the transfer commit, and B, what kind of statement this is making about what they felt they saw at linebacker in spring practice?
I think you just broke the record for the longest question ever. But I mean, look, you don't listen to me because I do like this.
I gave you credit, man. You've been railing about this transfer portal for a couple of years
right,
now.
And you still don't even understand what I say because I like this.
Well, this is the guy that you're going to call a transfer and not a free agent.
And you're going to say, all right, I can't. If you're going to be talking
that could go to a freshman. I know all the arguments you're going to make. I'm just letting you go ahead and
you haven't even mentioned once what I always say. But anyway, look, First of all, you keep saying KJ Cloyd, KJ Cloyd, KJ Cloyd. That's not how he pronounces his name, okay? He pronounces it Wayman Steed. That's how he pronounces his name. He's an experienced guy. He's not great, and he's an older guy. Like, he's Wayman Steed. Like, that's what he is. Wayman Steed started here. He wasn't real good. This guy may wind up starting here. I don't know. They bought, when you bring in a transfer, you're not bringing him in to sit on the bench. But the reason I like this transfer, and the reason I always tell you these are the only transfers I want that aren't free agents. If it's a transfer, I always say this to you, Gary, you never listen. I want it to be a grad senior who will be gone off the roster after 1 year. If you need a stopgap guy at a position, take a grad senior. I say it all the time. That's all I want. And they did it. I have zero. I don't know why people think I hate all transfers.
A 4-month stopgap.
The only transfers I ever want that if you're not a free agent, you guys out there now know what that means for me. If you're a transfer, I only want grad seniors. He fits grad senior. He could be a backup. He may never play it down. I don't know. But you know what? I'm sure they have some loose baggage they can ship off, which they need to because they're over 85. They'll get rid of a guy who they think will never pan out. I'm not going to name names, but there's a guy at tight end. There's a guy, there's a guy almost at every position that you can say, I'm sorry, you got to move on. And some of these guys have graduated. They can certainly try to find another place. They may not, and that's their loss. But, this is a business at the end of the day. You can feel bad for guys, but it is what it is. And as for how they feel about the linebacker position, which was your final question after talking for 20 minutes about nonsense, trying to ask one question, they obviously don't like it. They don't like the linebacker position. They got two guys, Francisco Maligoa and Wesley Basainth. Everybody we saw last year, in my opinion, failed at linebacker, including Corey Flagg. They were not championship level. Mario Cristobal and Derek Nicholson, they're trying to find championship level football players. Is this guy from Louisville? Is he championship level? No, but you know what? They think he's better depth-wise than what they have behind those two guys I just mentioned, and he can push maybe a Maligoa. Keep the heat on Maligoa. Don't let Maligoa just rest on his laurels. With Corey Flagg clearly outclassed. I mean, Corey Flagg, I think, with high heels on is 5'9", and Maligoa is 6'3". So, you need that physicality and size. They have nothing depth-wise. And at the linebacker position, you're going to get injuries that crop up. You need depth. You need guys who can play adequately behind and or with the starters. And I do think that this guy is, sadly, because he wasn't even good enough to play at Louisville or start at Louisville, sadly, I think he's probably right now their third or fourth best linebacker on this roster, which is mind-boggling. A guy who never started in 3 years at Louisville, almost had his arm amputated as a sophomore in high school. You can read about that story. Didn't play until his senior year. Had one JUCO offer out of senior year. Wound up at Louisville after 1 year in JUCO. Did nothing at Louisville other than 12 tackles, was his most tackles in a season. And now he's probably Miami's third or fourth best linebacker. That's not okay for this program. But it's where we are. And it's sad, and it needs to change. But he's be gone in a year. They're going to develop these, 4, I think, true freshman linebackers. And that's the future of this position. And that's okay. Those guys won't be ready to play this year. Maybe one of them, not all four. And you need more than that.
Wow, man, I'm impressed. I guess I read you wrong. I expected you to rail against this one, and I happen to agree with everything you said. And I don't really have a problem with the take. I mean, yes, you're going to have to replace somebody on the roster by bringing him in, but there are enough candidates for that. I guess we'll use that word, that you're going to be able to manage that. So they do need some better depth at linebacker, and this is probably the best available option this late in the game. So that was the genesis of what happened yesterday. You can read all about this transfer on the website this morning, and encourage you to do that. All right, we got some other just recruiting news for you guys to sink your teeth into. We catch up with Miami Norland 2025 standout athlete Jade Card. He's already visited Miami a handful of times, most recently for the June 8th Mario Cristobal camp. You can find out what he's saying. We have the story about an offer that came out of that camp. That's Palm Beach Central class of 2025 edge Ramondo Johnson. We give you an update on where he stands now. And one of the constants you're going to see at these camps going through the rest of this month is the 2024 kids are really not coming to camp very much. I mean, these are mostly going to be 2025, 2026 kids that are trying to get the eye of the Miami coaching staff. So if you're looking for massive developments out of these Mario Cristobal camps, There will be a Legends camp here in about a week and a half. That might be a little significant. There will be a recruit barbecue in late July. That will be very significant. Some 2024 kids might work out on that day at Miami. But there's not going to be a ton of earth-shattering developments out of these day-to-day Mario Cristobal camps that we will obviously be covering here in the coming days. But they're going to be focused very much on 2025 kids. And that leads me to another offer that went out to fast-rising 2025 Miami Norland athlete Daryl Desir. We catch up with him and give you an update on where Miami stands on his list. Also, for the second time this year, 2025, Lucas, Texas Lovejoy wide receiver Dalen McCutcheon traveled to Coral Gables. That was an unofficial visit. He fills us in on where things stand with him. We also have a lot of notes and tidbits from last week's end of the week Mario Cristobal camp. So make sure you check that out as well. Okay, and a couple other notes. We've got a few more football team analysis stories for you too. We break down the top 3 offenses and defenses that the Miami Hurricanes will face this season. And Matt, let me kick this one to you. There's going to be several challenges on the 2023 football schedule. Talk to us a little bit about these top 3 offenses and defenses that you were able to identify as being particularly worthy of focus here as we lead towards training camp beginning in August.
Well, spoiler alert, it's not going to be Blake James and Boston College on this list. Clemson makes both lists. You got Texas A&M and NC State with really good defenses. And then you got Florida State and North Carolina, obviously, with really good offenses. You guys can pretty much read the breakdowns. But to me, the interesting part of this whole analysis is, as I was going through it, there just are not a lot of really good defenses that Miami is going to play this year. There are some really good offenses, but I think the area that can really thrive is Shannon Dawson's new attack, because really the only 2 defenses, it's a big gap, okay, in defense. When you go from like Clemson, which I think will be one of the nation's best defenses, and then Texas A&M's next, which is a big step down from that, and then NC State's after that, which is a big step down from that. Florida State's probably after that, but these are not great defense. Like Clemson, you could say is a great defense. That's one great defense. The offenses Miami's going to face, you got North Carolina is going to be probably one of the nation's best offenses. They have a Heisman quarterback. Florida State, Heisman quarterback. Clemson, another Heisman potential quarterback. Like, you go down the list, Miami's playing 5 teams that have really, really good quarterbacks, other teams that have really, really good running games. Like, this defense is going to be challenged, and it's going to be challenged through the air. And if Miami's defensive line isn't getting pressure, they are going to get torched. It's why you see Miami bringing in 55 cornerbacks on the roster, because they know what Lance Guidry wants to do. And what Lance Guidry wants to do is leave his cornerbacks alone one-on-one down the field, assuming the pressure is going to get there. If the pressure doesn't get there, like, Miami's in big trouble. Miami's in big trouble. You can do that against teams that can't throw down the field.
But guys that can cover in this defense.
Correct. You need top cornerbacks in this defense. That's why they're freaking out. Like, when we talk on the show and we say, well, what does it say about Devontae Brown and Darryl Porter Jr.? Like, yeah, it says they're not elite, of course, but it also says, like, they're just desperate for numbers and just guys that maybe will just happen to show up in games. Like, they just need something because they know what's coming, and they know they can't run Lance Guidry's defense the way he wants to run it if the cornerbacks don't hold up. But with that said, Miami's offense is going to have a lot of opportunities to shine. I don't know what you guys would say. If you have a choice between, would you rather Miami faces bad defenses or bad offenses? Personally, I'd rather Miami faces bad offenses, but they have the opposite. So, I don't know if you guys disagree with that, but that's just my perspective on it.
All right. We also have a closer look at the metrics and data points to figure out a realistic projection for Miami's season record. And Matt, I got to go back to you again to put that into English, man. Explain to everybody why they should read that story on the website this morning.
Yeah, I wouldn't read it. It's a waste of time. So what we did was all 4 of us, we put up our predictions. What was it, last week? for what we each thought the team's record would be. Azubi had 12-0. Steven had 12-0. Gary had 12-0. I had 4-8. And no, it's not true. I think I had seven wins. I think Steven, you had what? Well, Azubi, you had 9.
I had 7, but I had a weird 7.
Yeah, you had a really weird 7. And then Gary had 8, I think, and Azubi had 9, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so this exercise in mundane facts, I decided to look at actual statistically significant points of reference instead of just what our brains told us. And what that means is essentially just going to Vegas and looking at the Vegas lines for every opponent and what their chances are of winning the ACC, what their chances are of winning the national title. I looked at some of the ESPN and some of the national magazines and what they're sort of projecting for some of these teams, and you put it all together and you sort of blend it up in a blender inside my brain, and then we were able to project for each game the most likely scenario for a win or a loss based on essentially what the expectations are for this team against those specific opponents and how good those opponents are. So in other words, we're not looking at a head-to-head matchup and how Miami's quarterback matched up against that secondary. What we're looking at is just how good is this team A versus Miami? How good is team B versus Miami? Just big picture, right? And when you mush that all up, what we got was basically 7-5 or 8-4, depending on, there was one swing game, which I believe was NC State, because the NC State team, depending on which publication you look at and which ranking you look at, they're either above or below Miami. It's on the road, so you give up those 3 points in the betting lines, but it was close enough that it's really just has to be considered a statistical toss-up. There's no deviation from the mean for those of you that are really nerdy like I am. And so that's where you get 7-5 or 8-4. And you know what? It's exactly what the Vegas betting line is, 7.5. So I guess some other person who wanted to waste a lot of their time like I did actually went through some of these numbers and came up with a 7.5 over-under, which is what it is.
All right, so we encourage you to check out that story today. It's a lot of fun, as you can tell. We also have a continuation of our top 50 post-spring players on the roster with breakdowns on number 13, who was offensive lineman Jalen Rivers, number 12, who's wide receiver Colby Young, and number 11, who is tight end Elijah Arroyo. So make sure you check that out as well. All right, so that's going to do it for this morning for Good Morning CaneSport. We hope that we've given you guys enough to sink your teeth into here over the last couple of days and coming into this morning. If you like this show, like our YouTube channel, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button. It helps us with those algorithms at YouTube, grow our audience. And like I said earlier, please, 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 if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please join our community of fans. Please join our site. Your subscriptions allow us to do what we do every single day. And today, that means Azubi and Steven are going to be taking turns trying to reach David Stone and Dylan Stewart. And we hope to bring that to you guys here at some point in the coming hours. We will do the best that we can. So for Azubi Charles, Steven Wagner, Matt Shodell, and myself, have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.